Letters to Heaven. Amanda Blake first knew something was wrong when her 80-year-old son stood at the curb in his dinosaur pajamas before sunrise, slipped a white envelope into the suburban mailbox, raised the red flag with both hands, and whispered, "Please get this to heaven." By noon, there was an unsigned reply waiting inside the same mailbox, folded in a cream-colored envelope with no stamp, no return address, and only one word written on the front in careful blue ink. Benjamin. Amanda found it between the electric bill and a grocery flyer while cold Ohio wind pushed dead leaves across the driveway, and for a moment she could not breathe. Her son had been writing letters to heaven for weeks. This was the first time heaven had written back. The mailbox stood at the edge of a quiet street in Westerville, Ohio, one of those streets where every house looked safe from a distance. Two-car garages, basketball hoops above driveways, pumpkins left too long after Halloween, snow shovels leaning beside front doors, minivans with school stickers, wreaths that stayed up from Thanksgiving to New Year because everyone was too tired to change them. The Blake's house was a pale blue ranch with white trim, a maple tree in the front yard, and a mailbox shaped like a little barn because David had bought it on a whim the summer before everything changed. Amanda had told him it was ridiculous. He had said, "Exactly. The world needs more ridiculous things that still hold important messages." Now the little barn mailbox stood crooked on its post because a delivery truck had bumped it in October. David would have fixed it the same afternoon. Amanda had meant to fix it for 3 months. Instead, she pushed it upright every few days and hoped no one noticed. She noticed everything since David died. She noticed which neighbors looked away because grief made them uncomfortable. She noticed which women from church left casseroles on the porch but did not knock. She noticed that the furnace rattled at 2:10 every morning, that Benjamin no longer slept with his closet door open, that the kitchen clock sounded louder after midnight, and that people said, "How are you holding up?" as if she were a shelf with too many boxes stacked on it. She noticed, above all, the empty side of the bed and the way her hand still reached toward it before her mind remembered. David Blake had been gone 9 months. A driver crossed the center line on a wet March evening outside Delaware, Ohio, and in a single sentence spoken by a state trooper at Amanda's front door, every ordinary thing in her life became before or after. Before, David taught 9th grade history, grilled chicken badly, sang off-key hymns with confidence, left coffee mugs in strange places, and made Benjamin laugh until he hiccuped. After, he became a framed photograph on the mantle, a closet of shirts Amanda could not donate, a voice preserved in phone videos, a name people lowered when they said it. Amanda had not stopped believing in God exactly. Would have been simpler if she had. She still believed he existed in the way she believed winter existed, whether she liked it or not. She believed Jesus had loved the world, had wept at a tomb, had risen from the dead. She had said those words in church for years. But belief had become something cold in her hands, like a key that no longer fit the door. Since David's funeral, she had attended Sunday service only twice, both times leaving before the final hymn because the sanctuary smelled like lilies and wood polish and people's careful pity. She could not bear the song "It Is Well With My Soul." She could not bear the old ladies who told her David was in a better place, as if the better place had packed Benjamin's lunch, paid the mortgage, or sat beside her in bed when the night pressed hard against the windows. Benjamin, though, still talked about heaven as if it were a town just beyond Columbus, difficult to drive to but not impossible. At first Amanda thought it was sweet. He drew pictures for his father and taped them to the refrigerator. He asked whether Daddy could see his soccer games. He wanted to know if heaven had libraries because David loved books, and whether people wore shoes there. Amanda answered as gently as she could. "I believe Daddy is with Jesus. I believe he is safe. I believe love does not disappear." She had no idea whether Benjamin heard the uncertainty beneath her words. Then she found the first letter. It was in early November, tucked under his pillow in a blue envelope from a box of thank you cards. The handwriting was uneven and large. "Dear Daddy in heaven, today I got a 92 on spelling. Mom said good job, but she looked sad after. I miss when you made spaghetti and pretended it was worms. I am trying to be good so Mom does not cry. Does Jesus let you read mail? If yes, please tell him I said thank you for clouds that look like dogs. Love, Ben. Amanda sat on the edge of his bed and cried so hard she had to press the envelope against her mouth so he would not hear from the bathroom. Later she put it back exactly where she found it. She told herself that children grieve in their own ways. She told herself not to interfere. But when she discovered he had begun placing letters in the mailbox, she panicked. "What are you doing, buddy?" she asked one morning, trying to keep her voice light. Benjamin turned from the curb, backpack too big for his shoulders, hair sticking up in the back. "Mailing Daddy." The school bus groaned at the corner. Amanda walked down the driveway. "Sweetheart, the mail carrier can't take letters to heaven." He looked at her with an expression both patient and sad, as if adults were always disappointing because they insisted on facts at the wrong moments. "I know the mail carrier can't. But maybe Jesus can get it after." "How?" "I don't know. You always say prayer is talking to God. This is like prayer but with paper." Amanda had no answer for that. The bus pulled up, brakes sighing. Benjamin hugged her quickly and ran. Amanda waited until the bus turned the corner, then opened the mailbox. Inside was an envelope addressed in blue crayon to Daddy, Heaven, care of Jesus. No stamp. She should have taken it. She should have put it in a memory box, or talked to him that evening, or called a child therapist like the school counselor had suggested. Instead, she closed the mailbox and lowered the red flag. She could not bring herself to intercept prayer, even paper prayer. The letters disappeared. She assumed the mail carrier left them behind and Benjamin removed them later. Or perhaps they fell behind the bills. Grief made detail slippery. Some days Amanda could barely remember whether she had paid the water bill, let alone track envelopes to heaven. But the unsigned reply was different. She found it on a Wednesday. Benjamin was at school. Frost still clung to the grass though the sun was bright. Amanda wore David's old Ohio State sweatshirt and slippers with cracked soles, because working from home had made her less attentive to things like shoes. She opened the mailbox expecting junk mail and the replacement debit card she had requested after losing hers somewhere between the pharmacy and the car. Instead, the cream envelope lay on top, clean and deliberate. Benjamin. Her son's full name, not Ben. That alone made her stomach tighten. She looked up and down the street. A dog barked behind a fence. Mr. Keller 2 houses down dragged trash cans from the curb. A UPS truck turned onto another street. Nothing unusual. Amanda carried the envelope inside and placed it on the kitchen table. For 5 minutes she stared at it. She told herself not to open it. It belonged to Benjamin. But someone had put a letter into her mailbox for her grieving child. Someone had read his pain, or guessed at it, and answered without signing a name. The protective anger rose before she could stop it. She opened the envelope. Inside was a single page of thick paper. The handwriting was neat but old-fashioned, the kind taught before computers changed people's hands. Dear Benjamin. I cannot write as your daddy, because that would not be honest. But I can tell you this. Letters written in love are never wasted. Jesus hears every word that a hurting heart cannot say out loud. Your father is not lost to him. You are not lost either. When you miss your daddy, tell your mother. She misses him too. Sometimes grown-ups look strong because they do not know how to ask a child for help, but your love is not a burden to her. It is a light. There is a verse in the Bible that says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." Comfort does not always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it comes as soup on the porch, a hand held in the dark, a neighbor raking leaves, or a boy brave enough to put his sorrow in the mailbox. You are loved more than you know. A friend. Amanda read it once. Then again. By the third reading, her hands shook so badly the paper rattled. At first, the words nearly undid her. Your father is not lost to him. Sometimes comfort comes as soup on the porch. A boy brave enough to put his sorrow in the mailbox. She felt seen in a way that made her want to sit down and weep. Then suspicion hardened over the tenderness. Who had written this? Who had touched Benjamin's grief without her permission? Who knew he wrote letters? Who believed they had the right to use Bible verses and gentle handwriting to enter her family's wound? She folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, and waited for the school bus like someone preparing for a courtroom. Benjamin came home at 3:42, cheeks red from the cold, backpack bouncing. He stepped off the bus, saw Amanda standing by the mailbox, and smiled until he noticed her face. Mom? She held up the cream envelope. Did you ask someone to write this? His eyes widened. It came? You knew about it? He dropped his backpack at his feet. I hoped. A person wrote this, Benjamin. A real person. Did you give someone your letters? He looked down at the driveway. No. Did someone at school tell you to do this? A teacher? A counselor? No. Did someone at church? He kicked a brown leaf. We don't go to church. The word struck harder than he knew. Amanda crouched in front of him. Then how did this happen? Benjamin's lower lip trembled, not with guilt but with fear that something fragile was about to be taken away. I don't know. I put my letters in the mailbox. Sometimes they are gone. Today there was one back. Who takes them? The mail lady, maybe. The mail lady does not deliver to heaven. I know. He burst out, tears coming now. But maybe God can use people. Dad said God uses people all the time. Like when Mrs. Palmer brought lasagna and you said it was too salty but ate it anyway because she was trying. Amanda almost laughed despite herself. Then she saw his tears and the laugh died. Ben, someone may be trying to trick you. He stared at her. They said they are not Daddy. That does not mean it is okay. I know it is not Daddy. His voice broke. I know Daddy is dead. I know he is not coming home. I just wanted someone to know where my letters went. Amanda pulled him into her arms, but he stood stiffly. After a moment, he picked up his backpack and walked past her into the house. His bedroom door closed quietly, which hurt more than a slam. That night, after Benjamin fell asleep, Amanda sat at the kitchen table with the reply letter beside a legal pad. She wrote a list of possible suspects. Mail carrier. Neighbor. School counselor. Pastor Michael. Mrs. Palmer. Some stranger? The word stranger made her chest tighten. She checked the door locks twice, then a third time. She looked through the front window at the mailbox, pale under the street lamp. It seemed suddenly less ridiculous, more dangerous. A little barn full of secrets. The next morning, she waited by the curb for the mail carrier. The carrier's name was Denise. Amanda knew this because David had known everyone's name. Denise was in her 50s, with a silver braid tucked under her postal cap, a weathered face, and an impressive ability to maneuver the mail truck through icy streets. She had delivered sympathy cards after David's death with unusual gentleness, placing them between the doors when the box overflowed. Morning, Amanda, Denise said, pulling up. Cold one. Did you put this in my mailbox? Amanda held up the cream envelope. Denise looked at it, then at Amanda. No. Have you been taking letters from my son addressed to heaven? The question came out sharper than intended. Denise's expression changed, not defensive at first but sad. I have seen them, she said. Amanda's anger flared. You have seen them? If the flag is up and there is outgoing mail, I check. That is my job. And you took them? Denise paused. The first time, I left it. The next day it was wet from rain. I thought. I did not want him to find it ruined. So I took it out and put it in a plastic sleeve. I have them in a tray in the truck. I did not read them. Amanda stared. You kept my child's letters? I did not know what else to do. You could have left them. Yes. You could have returned them. Yes. You could have knocked and told me. Denise glanced toward the house. You were not answering the door much then. The truth of it made Amanda angrier. For weeks after the funeral, and again as winter approached, she had ignored knocks unless she recognized the person through the window. Denise continued softly. My brother died when I was 10. I used to write him notes and hide them in library books because I thought heaven might have a library. My mother threw them away when she found them. She was grieving too. I know that now. But at 10, it felt like she threw him away. I did not want Benjamin to feel that. Amanda gripped the envelope. Did you write back? No. Denise shook her head. I thought about asking Pastor Michael, but I didn't. I know you have not been at church. I did not want to overstep. Someone overstepped. Denise looked genuinely troubled. I am sorry. I can bring you the letters. They are sealed. Today. Of course. Denise drove on. Amanda stood in the cold feeling less satisfied than she expected. Denise had been wrong, perhaps, but not cruel. That complicated the anger, and Amanda preferred uncomplicated anger. It gave her energy. At noon, Denise returned with 6 envelopes in a clear plastic folder. Amanda thanked her stiffly and took them inside. She did not open them. She placed them in a shoebox in her closet, beside David's old watch and the program from his funeral. Then she sat on the floor and pressed her hands to her eyes. She had thought she was protecting Benjamin from false hope. But as the day passed, a question grew in her. Was she protecting him from hope itself because she no longer trusted it? She did not answer. Instead, she called the school. Benjamin's teacher, Mrs. Alvarez, said she knew nothing about letters to heaven but gently asked whether Benjamin had seemed more withdrawn at home. Amanda resented the question and answered too quickly. The school counselor, Mr. Briggs, returned her call and said Benjamin had mentioned missing his father but had not spoken of letters. Children often use symbolic communication, he said. Amanda hated the phrase. Symbolic communication sounded sterile, like grief pinned under glass. She called Pastor Michael next, though she had avoided him for months. He answered on the second ring. Amanda. I am glad to hear your voice. She skipped greeting. Did you or anyone from church put an unsigned religious letter in my mailbox for Benjamin? There was a silence. No, he said. I did not. What happened? She read him part of the reply, voice tight. When she finished, Pastor Michael exhaled. That is a tender letter. That is not the point. No. It is not. I understand why you are upset. Do you? Because people keep understanding me in ways that feel very close to managing me. He was quiet again. Pastor Michael was in his late 30s, younger than many expected a pastor to be, with a soft Kentucky accent and a habit of pausing before answering difficult questions. David had liked him. Amanda had liked him too before grief made everyone suspect. I am not trying to manage you, he said. I am sorry if we have made you feel that way. Has the church been talking about us? The church has been praying for you. That is a polite way to say yes. It means your names have been held with care. Not gossip. Amanda closed her eyes. Who knew about Benjamin and the letters? Not from me. I did not know. But people know we are vulnerable. And now someone has decided my son needs anonymous messages about Jesus. Pastor Michael's voice remained gentle. Jesus does not need anonymity to love your son. But people sometimes hide when they are afraid their comfort will be rejected. That struck too close. Amanda almost hung up. Find out if anyone at church wrote it, she said. I can ask carefully. Not carefully. Clearly. Amanda. No. I am tired of people being careful around us while doing whatever they want in the shadows. She ended the call and immediately felt childish. Then she felt justified. Then exhausted. That evening, Benjamin refused meatloaf, which had been one of David's recipes and had become unbearable in its absence. Amanda should not have made it. She watched her son push peas around his plate. I talked to the mail carrier, she said. His fork stopped. She has your letters. She did not read them. She kept them safe because she did not want them ruined. Benjamin's shoulders relaxed slightly. Can I have them? Yes. Did she send the reply? No. Then who? I am trying to find out. He looked at her across the table. His face, still round with childhood, had shadows under the eyes that seemed too old. Why are you mad? He asked. Because someone wrote to you without asking me. But it helped. You do not know that yet. I do. His voice was small but firm. When I read it at recess, I felt like maybe Daddy was not just gone into nothing. I know you said he is with Jesus, but when you say it, you look like you are not sure. The letter looked sure. Amanda felt as if he had put his finger directly on the bruise. She whispered, I want to be sure for you. I know. I am sorry I am not. Benjamin's eyes filled. I don't need you to be sure all the time. I need you to not be mad when I miss him. Amanda covered her mouth. The meatloaf cooled between them. She had thought she was hiding her pain, but perhaps she had only made Benjamin afraid to show his. I am not mad that you miss him, she said. You get quiet. I know. You leave the room when I talk about him. I know. So I wrote letters. There was no accusation in his voice. That made it worse. Amanda moved around the table and knelt beside his chair. I am so sorry, baby. He slid into her arms, peace forgotten, and cried into her shoulder. She held him and finally said the thing she had avoided saying to him because it seemed too heavy for a child. I miss him too. I miss your dad every hour. Sometimes I do not talk about him because I am afraid if I start, I will not stop crying. Benjamin sniffed. It is okay if you cry. Is it? Yes. Dad cried when the dog died in that movie. Amanda laughed through tears. He did. Very loudly. He said brave people leak sometimes. David had said that. Of course he had. Amanda pressed her face into Benjamin's hair and cried until the meatloaf was cold and the kitchen window reflected them like two figures in a dark painting, holding each other under the yellow light. The unsigned letter remained on the counter for days. Amanda read it more often than she admitted. She still wanted to know who wrote it. She still felt invaded. But the words worked on her. Comfort does not always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it comes as soup on the porch. She began to notice what had arrived. There had been soup. Too much soup at times. Lasagna from Mrs. Palmer. Chili from the Kellers. Grocery cards in plain envelopes. Someone shoveled her driveway after the first snow, though she never saw who. A teenager from church had mowed the lawn twice in May and refused payment, saying he needed service hours, though school service hours had ended weeks before. Denise had kept Benjamin's letters safe. Pastor Michael had left voicemails she ignored but never sounded offended. The church secretary had sent birthday cards to Benjamin, one in April and one on David's birthday in September, saying, "We remember him with you." Amanda had thrown the September card into a drawer because remembering hurt. Now she took it out and read it again. People had been carrying small pieces of them. Amanda had mistaken it for pity because distrust felt safer than receiving. On Saturday morning, a light snow began to fall. Benjamin asked if they could walk to the mailbox together. He had written another letter. Amanda's first instinct was to say no. The investigation was not over. The world was not safe. Hope was not controlled. But Benjamin stood in his coat, letter in mittened hand, waiting. "Can I read it?" she asked. He hesitated. "It is private." "Okay. But I can tell you some." "I would like that." "It says I miss Dad and Mom misses Dad and we ate meatloaf and cried. It asks Jesus to tell Dad I still remember how to throw a curveball but not good. It asks if Dad can see snow." Amanda swallowed. "That is a good letter. Will the mail lady take it?" "I think we should decide together what to do with your letters." He looked worried. "Can we still put it in the mailbox?" Amanda looked at the little barn David had bought, crooked and ridiculous, holding more than bills. "Yes. But maybe we put it in and pray. Then later we keep it in a box, so your words do not get lost." "Can Jesus still read it if we keep it?" "I think Jesus reads love before paper." Benjamin considered that. "Okay." They walked down the driveway. Snowflakes caught in his eyelashes. He opened the mailbox and placed the letter inside. Amanda raised the red flag. Then they stood together awkwardly. Prayer, once familiar, felt strange in her mouth. Benjamin whispered, "Dear Jesus, this is for Daddy but you can read it too." Amanda closed her eyes. "And please help us not be scared of missing him together." Benjamin slipped his hand into hers. They left the letter in the mailbox for an hour, then brought it inside and placed it in a shoebox labeled Letters to Heaven. Amanda did not know whether this was theologically precise. She only knew it allowed her son to speak and allowed her not to feel someone was stealing his words. The reply writer remained unknown until the following Thursday. Amanda found out because Mrs. Palmer fell on her front steps. Mrs. Palmer lived across the street in a brick Cape Cod with white shutters and a porch swing she never used. Her first name was Ruth, though everyone called her Mrs. Palmer because she had once taught third grade and never fully stopped. She was 76, widowed, small, and dignified in the way of women who owned matching winter gloves and wrote thank you notes for thank you notes. David had shoveled her walk every winter. After his death, she brought lasagna that was indeed too salty and said, "I will not ask you to talk, dear. I will leave this here." On Thursday afternoon, Amanda heard a cry outside and looked through the front window. Mrs. Palmer sat at the bottom of her steps, one hand gripping the railing, face pale. Amanda ran across the street without a coat. "Ruth." Mrs. Palmer looked embarrassed. "I am all right." "You are on the ground in snow. An undignified location, but not necessarily fatal." Amanda almost smiled. She helped her stand, but Mrs. Palmer winced sharply. Her ankle was already swelling. Amanda called urgent care, then drove her there because Mrs. Palmer's daughter lived in Cincinnati and could not arrive quickly. Benjamin sat in the back seat doing homework, solemn and concerned. At urgent care, while they waited for x-rays, Mrs. Palmer insisted Amanda take her house key and retrieve her insurance card from the writing desk. "Top drawer, blue folder," she said. "And please do not judge the dust. I am aging gracefully, which means lowering standards." Amanda drove back, left Benjamin in the car with the heat on and a book, and entered Mrs. Palmer's house. It smelled of lavender, old books, and furniture polish. Family photographs lined the hallway. In the living room, a small artificial Christmas tree stood half-decorated. On the mantel sat a nativity scene, the ceramic baby Jesus not yet placed in the manger. David had once said Mrs. Palmer waited until Christmas Eve to put him there because she has liturgical discipline and I have impatience. Amanda found the writing desk by the window. She opened the top drawer and saw the blue folder immediately. Beside it lay a pad of thick cream paper and matching envelopes. The same paper. Her breath stopped. She lifted one envelope. The texture, color, size, identical. On the desk was a fountain pen with blue ink. Beside the paper lay a church bulletin folded open to the prayer list. David Blake's name was under Remembering Those Who Grieve, along with Amanda and Benjamin. Amanda stood there, insurance folder in one hand, envelope in the other, while snow tapped at the window. Benjamin called from the car. She put the envelope down, closed the drawer, and returned to urgent care with her heart pounding. Mrs. Palmer had a sprain, not a break. Amanda helped her back into the house, settled her on the couch, made tea, and wrapped an ice pack in a towel. Benjamin carried in the mail and placed it carefully on the coffee table. "Thank you, young man," Mrs. Palmer said. "Your father would be proud of your manners." Benjamin looked at his shoes. "Thanks." Amanda felt the room tilt. She waited until Benjamin went to the kitchen to find cookies, then held up the cream envelope from her purse. The unsigned reply. Mrs. Palmer's face changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. "It was you," Amanda said. Mrs. Palmer closed her eyes. Yes. Anger returned, but now it had to climb over the fact that this old woman had just sprained her ankle and was sitting under a crocheted blanket. "You wrote to my son." "I did." "You read his letters?" "No." "Then how did you know?" Mrs. Palmer opened her eyes. They were pale blue and tired. "I saw him at the mailbox one morning, crying. After the carrier drove away, he remained there. I went out because it was cold. He asked me if Mail to Heaven needed a stamp." Amanda sat down slowly. "What did you say?" "I said I did not think so." Mrs. Palmer looked toward the window. "He told me he wrote to his father." "Not the contents." "Only that he wrote because he did not know where else to put words. He asked whether Jesus had helpers for mail. I told him Jesus has helpers for many things, but we must never pretend to be the person someone has lost." "So you decided to write back?" "Not immediately. I told him I would pray. He said grown-ups always say that when they do not know what to do." Amanda almost laughed, but it hurt too much. "He is not wrong," Mrs. Palmer said. "No. I prayed for 3 days," she continued. "Then I wrote that letter. I did not sign because I was afraid you would be angry." "I am angry." "I know. You should have talked to me." "Yes. You should have asked." "Yes. Then why didn't you?" Mrs. Palmer looked down at her hands. Her fingers were bent with arthritis. "Because I lost a son too." Amanda's anger faltered. "He was 23, Mrs. Palmer said. Afghanistan. His name was Peter. People were very kind at first, then very patriotic, then very quiet. They thanked me for his service when I wanted someone to ask whether he liked cinnamon rolls. Your David was one of the few who did. He came over one Veterans Day after mowing your lawn, sat on that porch step, and asked me what Peter was like as a boy. I told him Peter once mailed a peanut butter sandwich to his cousin in Cleveland because he thought everyone should have lunch." David laughed so hard he cried. Amanda remembered David coming home late that day, eyes red, saying only, "Ruth Palmer's son was wonderful." She had been busy folding laundry and had not asked more. Mrs. Palmer continued. When I saw Benjamin at the mailbox, I thought of Peter and the sandwich. I thought of letters that cannot arrive where we want them to. I also thought of the way grief makes children lonely when adults are drowning. I wrote because I wanted him to know his words mattered. You used scripture. Yes. You do not know what we believe anymore. No, Mrs. Palmer said gently. But I know what David believed. And I know the verse did not belong to me. Comfort from Christ is not manipulation when offered honestly, though I should have offered it with my name. Amanda stood and walked to the mantel, where photographs crowded around the nativity. A young man in uniform smiled from one frame. Peter, she assumed. He had Mrs. Palmer's eyes. Why didn't you sign it? Amanda asked again, quieter. Mrs. Palmer's voice thinned. Because if you rejected it, I could pretend you rejected a stranger, not me. That honesty pierced Amanda more deeply than any defense could have. She understood hiding behind distance. She had done it for months. Benjamin returned with a plate of cookies. Mrs. Palmer, your cookies are in a tin that says sewing stuff. As all proper cookies should be, she said. He set the plate down, then noticed the letter in Amanda's hand. He looked from his mother to Mrs. Palmer. You wrote it? He asked. Mrs. Palmer held his gaze. Yes, dear. I am sorry I did not sign my name. That was cowardly. Benjamin's eyes filled. Were you pretending to be Dad? No. Never. I cannot be your father. I only wanted to remind you that Jesus hears you, and that people here love you. He stood very still. Mom said someone might trick me. Mrs. Palmer nodded. Your mother was protecting you. That is her job. Are you in trouble? Mrs. Palmer looked at Amanda. So did Benjamin. Amanda felt the choice stand before her, plain and difficult. Distrust or receiving comfort without controlling it. She could scold Ruth Palmer until the old woman cried. She could gather Benjamin and leave, confirming that every act of help hid danger. She could demand apologies, set boundaries like walls, refuse the messy tenderness of people who loved imperfectly. Part of her wanted to. Control felt like the last form of safety left. But she looked at Ruth's swollen ankle, at Peter's photograph, at Benjamin's anxious face, and heard David's voice from years ago. God uses people all the time, Mandy. Usually the ones who are not sure they are doing it right. Amanda sat beside Benjamin and put the letter on the table. Mrs. Palmer should have signed it, she said. And she should have told me. Ruth nodded. But I think she wrote it because she cared. Not to trick you. Benjamin turned to Mrs. Palmer. Thank you. Mrs. Palmer's eyes shone. You are welcome. Amanda added, if there are more letters, we decide together. No secrets. No secrets, Ruth said. Benjamin looked relieved. Can Mrs. Palmer be one of Jesus' male helpers? Amanda pressed her lips together to keep from crying. Ruth did cry. I would be honored, Mrs. Palmer whispered. That evening, Amanda and Benjamin stayed to help Mrs. Palmer. They made scrambled eggs and toast because Ruth could not stand long. Benjamin carried the plate carefully, announcing, special delivery. Ruth laughed, and the sound filled the small house like a lamp being turned on. Amanda noticed that helping someone else did not remove grief but shifted its weight. It gave her hands something to do besides clench. When they left, Mrs. Palmer handed Amanda a small box. These are Peter's letters from basic training, she said. Not to keep. Just to show you something when you are ready. At home, after Benjamin went to bed, Amanda opened the box at the kitchen table. The letters smelled faintly of paper and time. Peter's handwriting was messy, full of jokes and complaints about food. In one letter, he wrote, Mom, if heaven has a post office, I bet the angels lose socks there too. Amanda laughed, then covered her mouth as tears came. Inside the box, folded at the bottom, was a note in David's handwriting. Ruth must have placed it there for her. Dear Mrs. Palmer, thank you for telling me about Peter. I know asking made you cry, and I am sorry for the pain, but I hope it was not only pain. I do not want our street to be a place where grief hides behind curtains. If you ever want to tell more Peter stories, I am a good listener and a bad pie eater, which means I will accept any pie offered even if it is experimental. Your neighbor, David. Amanda held the note to her chest. David had been carrying neighbors long before she realized. He had left behind not just absence, but a pattern. She called Pastor Michael the next morning. It was Ruth Palmer, she said. Ah. You knew? I guessed after asking around. She called me last night to confess before I could ask her directly. Of course she did. She feels terrible. She should feel a little terrible. Pastor Michael made a sound that might have been a careful laugh. Yes. Amanda looked out the window at the crooked mailbox. She also did something kind. Both can be true. I hate that. Most of Christian maturity is learning that two things can be true while we would prefer one simple thing. She rolled her eyes though he could not see. Pastor Michael, do you have a support group? For grief? For widows? Parents? Kids? I don't know. For people who are angry and suspicious and tired of casseroles. This time he did laugh gently. We have a grief support group on Tuesday nights. It is not perfect. There is coffee, sometimes stale cookies, and no requirement to be inspirational. Do people say things like God needed another angel? Not twice. Amanda smiled despite herself. I am not promising to come, she said. I will not put you on the sign-up sheet. But maybe. Maybe is welcome. Tuesday came with freezing rain. Amanda nearly used the weather as an excuse. Then Benjamin asked whether Mrs. Palmer could come over for dinner because her ankle hurt. Amanda said yes, then realized she could not go to the group if hosting dinner. Relief washed through her, followed by disappointment. She stood in the kitchen holding a bag of frozen peas and confronted the strange fact that part of her wanted to go. Mom? Benjamin said. You look like when you smell milk to see if it's bad. I am deciding something. About Mrs. Palmer? About church. He grew still. Are we going? Not tonight for service. There is a group. For people who miss someone. Kids? Mostly grown-ups. Will you talk about Dad? Maybe. He considered this. Can Mrs. Palmer still come? Yes. I can stay with her while you go. I know how to microwave soup. You are 8. I am almost 9. Amanda called Claire Henderson from church, whose number Pastor Michael had texted, and asked whether childcare existed for the group. Claire said her teenage daughter could sit with Benjamin in the church library if Amanda was comfortable. Amanda was not comfortable. Then Benjamin said, I want to see the library. So she went. The church building looked the same and not the same. It was red brick, with white columns and a fellowship hall added in the 1980s. Amanda had married David in the sanctuary under summer light, baptized Benjamin at the front, eaten too many potluck casseroles in the basement. Now walking in felt like entering a house where she had once lived but no longer knew where things were kept. The grief group met in a room with beige walls, a cross, a coffee urn, and a circle of chairs. There were 9 people. A widower named Frank who wore suspenders. A young woman named Melissa whose mother had died of cancer. A couple who had lost an adult daughter to addiction. Claire Henderson, whose husband had died years earlier and who facilitated with warmth that did not feel forced. Pastor Michael sat in the circle but not at the center, which Amanda appreciated. No one made her speak first. They introduced themselves with names and, if they wanted, the name of the person they missed. When it was Amanda's turn, her throat closed. "I am Amanda," she said. "My husband was David. He died in March. I have a son, Benjamin. I am mostly here because he started writing letters to heaven and apparently has more courage than I do." There were gentle smiles, not pitying. Frank nodded as if this made perfect sense. Claire said, "Children often find doors we adults are too proud or too hurt to open." Amanda looked at her. "I may leave if people say anything too neat." "Good," Claire said. "We try not to. If someone does, we have permission to throw a stale cookie." For the first time in months, Amanda laughed in a church building. As the weeks passed, Tuesday nights became part of life. Not every week. Sometimes Amanda skipped because Benjamin had homework or because grief made her stubborn. But she returned more often than not. She learned the names of the dead. Frank's wife, Eleanor. Melissa's mother, Joan. The couple's daughter, Kate. Claire's husband, Robert. She learned that grief had many accents but recognized its own language. She learned that faith did not remove hard questions. It gave people somewhere to bring them without pretending they were small. One night, Pastor Michael read a short passage from John 11, where Jesus wept at Lazarus's tomb. Amanda had heard it before. David had loved that verse because it was short enough for Benjamin to memorize when he was 5. Jesus wept. At the group, Frank said, "I used to think that meant Jesus was sad for a minute even though he knew the ending. Now I think it means he does not stand outside our grief explaining the ending. He steps into it." Amanda wrote that in the margin of her notebook. At home, Benjamin's letters to heaven shoebox grew. Sometimes he wrote to David. Sometimes to Jesus. Sometimes to both. "Dear Dad, Mom went to grief group. She brought home cookies. They were bad but she smiled. Dear Jesus, please help Mrs. Palmer's ankle. Also please tell Dad I got better at curveballs. Dear Dad, Mom cried today because the blender broke. I think it was not about the blender." Amanda began writing too. At first she wrote only to David. "Dear David, the mailbox is still crooked. I know. Stop judging me from glory." Then to Jesus. "Lord, I do not know how to do this without him. I do not know how to parent a boy who asks questions I cannot answer. I do not know how to trust kindness. Help." She did not hear an audible answer. No cream envelope appeared for her. But comfort came, annoyingly, in the forms the unsigned letter had promised. Soup. A hand held in the dark. A neighbor raking leaves. Living hands. Ruth Palmer became a regular presence. Benjamin visited her after school on Thursdays, first to help with small tasks while her ankle healed, then because he liked her stories. She told him about Peter, about David, about teaching 3rd grade. She did not pretend to be his grandmother. She was simply Ruth, one of Jesus' male helpers. They created a small wooden box together and painted it blue, with white letters on the side. Letters to Heaven. It sat on Amanda's kitchen counter, not in the mailbox, though sometimes Benjamin still carried letters outside and placed them in the little barn for a while before bringing them in. Rituals, Amanda learned, did not have to be efficient to be meaningful. In February, on what would have been David's 41st birthday, Amanda nearly stopped going to the group. The day was brutal from the start. Benjamin woke angry, refused breakfast, and shouted that birthdays in heaven were stupid because nobody sent cake. Amanda burned toast, cried in the shower, and snapped at a client during a video meeting. By evening, she wanted to turn off every light and disappear. Then the doorbell rang. On the porch stood Frank from group, holding a pie. "I heard from Pastor Michael it was David's birthday," he said. "This is Apple. I did not bake it. That would endanger the community. But I bought it sincerely. Amanda stared at him. Why? Frank shrugged. First birthdays after are awful. Second ones too, but the first has teeth. She let him in. Ruth came over. Claire arrived with a candle. Pastor Michael dropped off a card and did not stay. Benjamin insisted they sing Happy Birthday to Dad, then cried halfway through. Amanda almost stopped him, but Ruth began singing louder, voice trembling, and the others joined. They ate pie. They told David stories. Frank told a story about his Eleanor's first birthday after death, when he bought her favorite chocolate cake and ate it alone in the garage while yelling at God. Benjamin found this hilarious and terrible. At bedtime, Benjamin said, Dad would like that we had pie. Yes. Do you think he heard us sing? Amanda sat on the edge of his bed. Once she would have answered carefully, afraid of promising too much. Now she said, I do not know exactly how heaven hears, but I believe love in Jesus is not cut off. So maybe not like through ears the way we hear. But I believe nothing good is wasted. Benjamin nodded. Mrs. Palmer said letters written in love are never wasted. She is wise. She said you were mad at her. I was. Are you still? Amanda thought about it. Not in the same way. Did you forgive her? The question was simple, and therefore impossible to avoid. I am forgiving her, Amanda said. Sometimes forgiveness is a thing you choose more than once. Like cleaning my room. Much harder, but yes. He smiled sleepily. Jesus helps with forgiveness? I think so. Does he help with laundry? Indirectly. Through mothers. That seems less miraculous. Amanda laughed and kissed his forehead. Spring arrived slowly in Ohio, with mud, pale sunlight, and daffodils pushing through cold soil. The crooked mailbox survived another season, though Amanda finally hired a handyman from church to fix the post. Benjamin objected because Dad bought it crooked in spirit. The handyman, a cheerful man named Owen, straightened it while preserving its ridiculous barn shape. He refused payment, saying David had once helped him move a couch in a snowstorm. Amanda had not known. Every few weeks, another story of David surfaced from someone else's keeping, and each one hurt less like theft and more like inheritance. Amanda began helping with the grief group's practical needs. She made reminder calls, set up chairs, bought decent cookies because stale ones had become an affectionate joke but should not be a ministry standard. She created a small table near the entrance with blank cards, pens, tissues, and a wooden box labeled words we cannot say yet. People could write prayers, names, anger, questions, or nothing. Pastor Michael worried briefly that it might seem gimmicky. Then Frank placed a card in the box after a terrible week, and no one questioned it again. One evening, a young mother named Hannah came to group for the first time. Her husband had died by suicide 2 months earlier. She sat with arms crossed, eyes fierce, daring anyone to comfort her badly. Amanda recognized the posture. When Hannah said, "If one more person tells me God does not give us more than we can handle, I will throw a chair," Amanda said, "Aim away from the coffee urn. It is the only thing holding some of us together." Hannah stared, then laughed once, unwillingly. Later, she cried in the hallway. Amanda stood beside her without touching until Hannah said, "I don't know what to tell my daughter." "How old?" 6. Amanda thought of Benjamin at the mailbox. Maybe start with the truth you can bear. Not all truth at once. But enough that she does not have to invent it alone. Hannah looked at her. Does that work? Some days. Other days you eat cereal for dinner and apologize. Hannah nodded as if this was the most useful theology she had heard. The group did not fix Amanda. That was not what healing looked like. She still woke some mornings reaching for David. She still envied couples arguing in grocery aisles because they had the luxury of ordinary annoyance. She still dreaded Father's Day. She still got angry when people spoke of closure, as if love were a cabinet door. But the anger no longer sealed her off from everyone. It became something she could bring into rooms where others did not flinch. In June, Father's Day approached like a storm on the weather app, visible days before it arrived. Benjamin grew quiet. Amanda found him sitting by the mailbox the Friday before, chin on knees. "Writing?" she asked. "Thinking." She sat beside him on the curb. A lawn mower droned somewhere. The air smelled of cut grass and hot asphalt. "I hate Father's Day," he said. "Me too. At school we made cards for dads. Mrs. Alvarez said I could make one for Grandpa or Uncle Rob. But I wanted Dad." "What did you do?" "I made one for Dad. It has nowhere to go." Amanda looked at the mailbox. "Maybe it has somewhere to be kept." He leaned against her shoulder. "Will I forget his voice?" The fear in his question nearly broke her. "We have videos," she said. "What if videos stop working?" "Then I will tell you. Mrs. Palmer will tell you. Pastor Michael, Frank, Owen, everyone who knew him will tell you. We will carry his voice together." Benjamin was quiet. "Like heaven's hope can be carried by living hands?" Amanda looked down at him. "Where did you hear that?" "I made it up. Or maybe Mrs. Palmer said something like it." She smiled through tears. "It is true." On Father's Day, they went to church. Not because Amanda felt strong, but because she no longer wanted to spend the day hiding. Pastor Michael acknowledged the day carefully, honoring fathers, those grieving fathers, those wounded by fathers, those longing to be fathers, those missing husbands, those for whom the day was complicated. Amanda appreciated every qualifier. During prayer, Benjamin leaned into her. Ruth sat on his other side. Frank sat behind them and passed tissues forward without comment. After service, they held a picnic on the church lawn. Benjamin played tag with other children for the first time in months. Amanda stood under a maple tree with Ruth. "I owe you an apology," Amanda said. Ruth raised an eyebrow. "For being angry that I wrote secretly to your child." "You were right." "I know." Amanda smiled. "That is what makes this difficult." "You were wrong. I was also wrong in how much I wanted to shut out every kindness because I could not control it." Ruth nodded slowly. "Grief makes locked doors look like wisdom." "Yes. I forgive you, dear." "I forgive you too." Ruth's eyes filled. "Thank you." Benjamin ran up then, sweaty and breathless. "Mrs. Palmer. Frank says Dad once dropped a whole watermelon in the church parking lot and it exploded. Is that true?" Ruth laughed. "Entirely true. Your father then tried to blame gravity as if he had discovered it." Benjamin looked delighted. Amanda watched him run back across the grass, carrying another piece of David in his laughter. By autumn, the Letters to Heaven box at church had become something Amanda never expected. A ministry for children and adults. Not a program with glossy flyers, just a quiet practice. People wrote to those they missed. Some letters were prayers. Some were complaints. Some were jokes. Once a month, during a short evening gathering, they placed the letters in a basket near the cross and prayed, not that the paper would travel through clouds, but that Christ would hold every love expressed there, every regret, every longing, every unsent word. Some people took their letters home. Some shredded them. Some burned copies in a small fire pit outside while singing hymns. No one was forced to do anything. Grief needed choices. Amanda spoke at the first gathering because Pastor Michael asked and because Benjamin said, "You should tell them about the mailbox, but not the parts that are mine." So she did. She stood in the fellowship hall, hands shaking, and looked at faces of all ages. Widows, children, divorced people grieving living losses, parents, veterans, teenagers, a man who had lost his brother to overdose, an elderly woman grieving a dog because love is love and loneliness does not care about categories. Ruth sat in the front row. Denise the mail carrier stood near the back, off-duty, eyes wet. Claire held the coffee pot. My son wrote letters to heaven, Amanda began. I thought I needed to protect him from disappointment. Then someone wrote back without signing a name, and I thought I needed to protect him from people. Both instincts came from love, but also from fear. What I have learned is that heaven's hope is not fragile because it travels through imperfect hands. The hands may get things wrong. We may need to apologize, set boundaries, start again. But Jesus has always used human hands to carry bread, wipe tears, write cards, fix mailboxes, hold children, and pass candles in the dark. These letters do not replace prayer. They can become prayer. They do not erase grief. They give grief somewhere honest to stand. She paused, tears rising. My husband David loved ridiculous things that held important messages. Our mailbox looked like a tiny barn. After he died, my son made it a chapel without asking permission. I am grateful he did. People were crying quietly. Amanda did not feel triumphant. She felt tender and afraid and held. Afterward, Denise approached with a bundle of envelopes tied in string. These are Benjamin's first letters, she said. I kept them safe. I am sorry I kept them without telling you. Amanda took them. Thank you for not letting the rain ruin them. Denise nodded, crying. You're welcome. That night, Amanda and Benjamin sat on the living room floor and opened the bundle together. She asked before reading each one. Some Benjamin kept private. Some he read aloud. They laughed at the cloud shaped like a dog. They cried over the line about trying to be good so Mom did not cry. You do not have to be good to keep me from crying, Amanda told him. You can be 8. Almost 9. Can I be sad too? Yes. Can I be mad? Yes. Can I be happy sometimes? Amanda pulled him close. Please. He leaned against her. Dad would want us to be happy sometimes. Yes. And eat pie. Definitely. They placed the letters in the wooden box Ruth had painted. Then Amanda added David's note to Mrs. Palmer, the one about not letting grief hide behind curtains. It belonged there. The second Christmas without David was still painful, but it did not feel empty in the same way. The house filled with people on Christmas Eve. Ruth came with cookies properly stored in a tin labeled buttons. Frank brought pie. Denise brought a model mail truck for Benjamin, which he declared historically important. Pastor Michael stopped by with his wife and baby daughter, and Amanda felt the old stab at seeing a whole family, then let it pass without shame. Joy for others did not betray sorrow for herself. They sang carols in the living room because Ruth insisted David would haunt them musically if they did not. Amanda played the piano badly. Benjamin sang loudly. During O Come, All Ye Faithful, Amanda's voice broke on the word joyful, but she kept singing. Joy, she had learned, did not always mean the absence of tears. Sometimes it meant singing with tears and discovering the song could hold them. Before bed, Benjamin placed one more letter in the little barn mailbox, now straight and sturdy. Dear Dad, it is Christmas Eve. We had people over and Mom played piano bad but happy. Mrs. Palmer says Jesus came because God wanted to be with us, not far away. I think heaven is far but also may be close when people love each other. I miss you. I love you. Merry Christmas. Love, Ben. Amanda stood beside him in the snow. Should we leave it overnight? He asked. She looked at the mailbox glowing under Christmas lights. Yes. Will someone take it? No. I will tell Denise not to. He smiled. Jesus can read it there. I believe he can. Mom? Yes? Do you think Dad knows about Mrs. Palmer being a mail helper? Amanda looked across the street. Ruth's window glowed warm behind lace curtains. I think if heaven rejoices over love, then yes. Benjamin nodded solemnly. Good. They went inside. Amanda paused at the door and looked back once more. Snow settled gently on the mailbox roof, on the raised flag, on the envelope inside. She did not feel the need to control what happened next. The letter could remain there until morning. It could be brought inside and kept. It could be prayer either way. Later, after Benjamin slept, Amanda sat alone by the Christmas tree. David's photograph rested on the mantel. A candle burned beside it. She held the unsigned reply Ruth had written months earlier, now worn at the folds. She had read it so often the words felt memorized. Letters written in love are never wasted. She took out a blank card. Dear David, I am learning to receive comfort. You would think this is funny because I used to correct how people loaded the dishwasher, so receiving anything uncontrolled is advanced spiritual work. Benjamin is growing. He misses you with his whole body. So do I. Ruth Palmer wrote him a letter and accidentally started a revolution of paper and prayer. Denise saved his letters. Pastor Michael still pauses too long before answering questions. Frank brings pie. The church has become less of a building I avoid and more of a room where people can say names without whispering. I am still angry sometimes. I still hate that you are not here to assemble toys and complain about tangled lights. I still do not understand why Jesus answered Mary and Martha by weeping before raising Lazarus. But I think I understand this much. He came close. He comes close. And sometimes he comes close wearing the face of a neighbor with salty lasagna. I love you. I am letting people love us. You would be proud, though you would probably make a joke because sincerity embarrassed you. Mandy. She folded the letter and placed it in the wooden box. Years later, when Benjamin was taller than Amanda and the little barn mailbox had been repainted twice, he would still remember the winter of the letters. He would remember how grief made his mother quiet, how an unsigned reply made her angry, how Mrs. Palmer cried when she confessed, how the church basement smelled like coffee and old hymnals, how people wrote names on cards and placed them near the cross. He would not remember every word adults said. Children rarely do. But he would remember that heaven did not feel like a locked sky. It felt, somehow, like hands passing hope from one person to another. Amanda would remember too. She would remember distrust loosening slowly, not because every person behaved perfectly, but because grace kept arriving through flawed messengers. She would remember the first time she sat with Hannah in the hallway, the first time Benjamin laughed during a David story without looking guilty, the first time she prayed without feeling she was speaking into a wall. She would remember Ruth Palmer's swollen ankle, Denise's plastic folder of sealed letters, Frank's sincere pie, Pastor Michael saying maybe is welcome. She would remember that comfort did not come like thunder. It came as soup on the porch, a hand held in the dark, a neighbor raking leaves, a boy brave enough to put sorrow in the mailbox. And on certain winter mornings, when frost silvered the lawns in Westerville and the mail trucks began their routes, Amanda would stand at the curb with a mug of coffee, touch the red flag of the little barn mailbox, and whisper a prayer for every message love had written and could not deliver by ordinary means. She no longer imagined that heaven required stamps, or that grief required silence, or that faith meant never trembling. She believed instead in a Savior who read hearts before envelopes, who wept with the grieving, who rose with wounds still visible, and who taught his people to become, in small and holy ways, replies to one another's unanswered letters. Inside, Benjamin would call for breakfast. The day would begin with cereal, homework, bills, traffic, missing David, laughing at something Ruth said, forgetting to buy milk, remembering to pray, failing, trying again. An ordinary day. A mercy. A life still being written. Amanda would lower the mailbox flag, turn toward the house, and go in.